If you know what you're doing, you can get crazy good efficiency on AMD cards. So in this video, we're going to show you the full process of finding the perfect overclock settings for your AMD GPU, no matter what coin you're mining. Warning, there are people pretending to be me in the comments and on social platforms. I'll never ask you to add me on WhatsApp or Telegram, and I'll never ask you to send me money, crypto, or your personal information. Alright? So please be careful, use your common sense, and don't let any of these imposters fool you. Alright, now back to the video. Hey, how's it going, GPU heads? Thanks for clicking on my video. 𝐅𝐀𝐕𝐎𝐔𝐄 here. And in this video, I sit down with Kiwi crypto miner, a fellow YouTuber and AMD overclocking master, as he takes us through the process of finding the perfect overclocking and undervolting settings for any AMD GPU for mining any coin. And while explaining his process, he also walks us through as we apply his steps to find the perfect settings for mining Ravencoin on my 6700 XTs. And I'm actually going to tell you the results we got right here at the beginning of the video. So we got 25 mega hash for a real at-the-wall power draw of 94 watts. So that is just 3.76 watts per mega hash. And to put that into perspective, the best NVIDIA 3000 series GPU that I've tested for Ravencoin mining is the 3070, and that gets around 32 mega hash at 167 watts power draw measured with my PMD. And that's about 5.16 watts per mega hash. And keep in mind, that is the most efficient settings for the most efficient NVIDIA 3000 series GPU for Ravencoin, and it's pulling almost 40% more power per mega hash. So let's put that into a real world example real quick. You could either get 4 6700 XTs that would give you around 100 mega hash at 376 watts, or you could get 3 3070s, which would also get you around 100 mega hash, but at 501 watts. So yeah, pretty significant difference there. And I know you might be thinking that there are still some algorithms where NVIDIA cards just absolutely dominate AMD cards, like FLUX. But that might actually just be because the code in the miner software hasn't really been optimized for AMD GPUs yet. As we saw with LolMiner, who just released a new version that promises up to 22% better FLUX performance on AMD GPUs, with further improvements still to come. More on that in an upcoming video, by the way, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that. Now, just quickly before we get into it, I want to say please go subscribe to Kiwi Crypto Miner and watch a couple of his videos. Have a look around his channel and see the different hash rates and wattages he's able to get on different AMD cards. Because if you're watching my channel, then that obviously means that you like knowing the numbers and you like knowing how to optimize your cards, so that means that you will definitely like his channel a lot too. So please go check him out. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below this video. But now, let's get into how to overclock AMD GPUs with Kiwi Crypto Miner. All right, so I'm here on the call with Kiwi Crypto Miner. So first of all, thank you so much for being on my channel and sharing your knowledge with me and everyone watching.
Cheers, man. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And I believe you have somewhat of a step list for sort of what your workflow looks like. Is that right?
Yep, I've got a few things up on screen here. So the first up, you got to set up a few things in order to make the rig set up as best possible. So set up your cards in the best order for temperature and stuff. Make sure it's all set up before you start doing the undervolting process, because if you have to change the cards around after, you're gonna have to redo the undervolting process.
So basically make sure they're in the spot they will be for the foreseeable future, to make sure your overclock settings don't jump around as you switch the order of your cards in your rig.
Yeah, pretty much, because if you do change it, you will have different overclock and undervolt settings. It's pretty weird, but something that happens. And then make sure you have the most recent version of HiveOS. Download all your updates and make sure you have the most recent version of your AMD driver, or at least close to the most recent. All right, next up is the flight sheet. So I know you've already got a flight sheet in there for Team Red Miner for those 4 6700s, and then you'll put in R mode.
Well, let's do that just so people can see. So I'll go flight sheet and I'll make a new one. So let's go. We're doing Ravencoin today, and let's do hero miners because I like hero miners. Team Red Miner, yeah?
Yep.
So then there's an extra config here I have to put in, right?
Yep.
There we go. So that puts Team Red Miner into R mode, which is just a way for it to save more power on 6000 series, is that right?
Yeah, it's not technically all of them. So the 6600 doesn't really have much of an effect with the R mode, or the 6600 XT just has like a small effect. But yeah, on the higher cards, 6700 XT and above has pretty good effect.
Like, should I apply that flight sheet first, or should we start entering some overclock settings first?
Yeah, so overclocks, kind of, there's one big step in the process. You got to find some pre-existing settings that won't crash the rig.
Well, you mentioned finding some good numbers on YouTube, and it just so happens that I know this very good AMD overclocking channel on YouTube called Kiwi Crypto Miner that has basically any coin for any AMD GPU, more or less. So why don't we go look up what numbers he's put in? How does that sound?
Smooth plug.
If you have it up, let's go with that. So
1340 on the core clock.
1340.
I'll give you some numbers that are a bit higher than what I've got, just because your model of GPU is different and we don't quite know where it's going to sit. Right. So go 670 on the core voltage.
So what you're doing now is you're basically giving me, like, you found your you found really optimized settings on a YouTube video, which just so happens to be your YouTube video, right? And then you're entering slightly higher numbers for the voltages.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And then we can try working each one of them down based on how your GPUs react.
But you're keeping all of the clocks the same as what you have in the video, or yes. So you're doing the same clocks, just slightly higher voltages. Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be very unlikely for the clocks to be more or less efficient based on different models.
Okay.
But also the variance on the clock isn't too great, so you'd need it to be like 50 or 100 different for it to actually have an effect.
Right. So, okay. I think the reason I ask is because I come from an NVIDIA side. I've got plenty of experience overclocking NVIDIA cards, and especially going too high on your clocks on NVIDIA cards will crash your rig basically. And a lot of times when I was starting out and just copying someone else's clock numbers, they would be too high for my cards and it would crash my rig. But would you say that's not as big of a thing with AMD cards? Like, copying your clocks won't necessarily crash my card?
Yeah, it's not so much of a thing because you'll just get less hash rate if your memory clock is too high. Which isn't really a thing on NVIDIA. But if you push it too high on memory clock, your hash rate will go down and you'll lose efficiency. The core clock, if you go too high, it won't do anything. You can go all the way up to like 2500 or something on most 6000 series cards, and you'll just be burning extra power for no reason.
Right.
If you go too low on the core clock, then you'll just miss out on hash rate. But you'll probably be quite aware of it because you'll notice that you're not getting full hash rate. So memory controller voltage will just go around 650. We'll give it a try, although I know you're having some issues with the memory controller voltage before, so we might have to bump that up. You can try it on 800 to start with, and then we can push it down after, because really with these numbers, we want it to run stably.
Yeah, let's do that, and let's just keep that in mind.
And then memory clock 1073. So the reason that we do 1073 is it's a threshold number. So if you go 1075, then your SoC VDD max will set at about 1000 to 1005. But if you just drop it down to 1073, so you're taking a step down, which allows the SoC VDD max to go all the way down to like nearly 800. Memory voltage will go like 1260.
1260, right?
Do you have auto fan set up on the rig?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we'll leave that. SoC freak, I actually don't think the SoC freak matters. I've never seen a power consumption difference. So just leave that.
Okay, interesting.
Some people might contradict me in the comments because, I'm not 100% sure on that one. System on card or system on chip or something is what it stands for.
Yeah.
It's just another clock speed, but I've never found a difference with the actual frequency. It doesn't seem to affect how low the voltages can go. Speaking of the voltage, we'll start at 830.
830. Okay. So
actually,
that was going to be my question. Sorry to cut you off there, but like, do you need to set a frequency in order for the voltage to kick in, or you can set the voltage without setting the frequency and you're all good?
You can set a voltage without setting the frequency. It's just going to choose its own frequency. It'll make no difference whatsoever.
Okay, so is that across the board for all AMD GPUs, or just specifically for the 6700 XT?
I've never personally noticed any difference on any cards.
On any, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
it's basically a setting you can skip, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless someone else has better information than me, they can check it down in the comments below.
Yeah.
Might want to actually start a little bit higher on the SoC VDD max, maybe like 840 or something, just because that's
840.
Yeah, it's a quite a widely varied statistic. So some cards will need a lot higher.
Should I apply this?
Oh yeah, no, you can go ahead and apply it. Yeah.
All right, we have entered all the overclock settings now. So should we launch the flight sheet?
Yep, sounds good.
Cool. So what I did was I went into my Team Red Miner here, and I just said to just run the very first GPU. So we will only be mining on the first 6700 XT, which is the one we set the clock settings for. So let me run this flight sheet.
There we go.
All right, so we have some hash rate. That's a good sign. And we're at 84 watts. Load average seems absolutely fine. So I'll refresh again. Load average is creeping up a little bit, but nowhere near anywhere that would be concerning yet. So should we just give it a couple minutes, or?
Give it a moment, because the hash rate's still really low.
Yeah.
But one thing with the load average is if it keeps ticking up over time, then you're probably going to crash. Like the rig's probably like already in a crash cycle. Yeah. But if it ticks up like for a few ticks and then starts ticking back down, then you're fine.
So let's refresh again. Yeah, it's already ticked down a little bit there.
Yeah, and we've got some more hash rate.
Beautiful.
23. It should jump up into the 24s. At least mine get into the 24s.
Right. Well, so far, hash rate seems perfectly stable around 24, just above 24, which is a very good sign. I know on Raven it tends to fluctuate up and down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly normal. So
the next step is kind of overclocking as you would do on NVIDIA cards as well. So you want to find the optimal memory clock and core clock.
Okay.
So for this one, we know that the memory threshold is 1073. We can't go any higher than that without...
Right, because of the SoC voltage thing. Right, okay.
Yeah. So in theory, we could test going lower on the memory clock and see
sorry to cut you off. Since we're mining Ravencoin, which does use the memory quite heavily, would we get more hash rate by going up on the memory clock?
Probably yes.
Probably yes, but it wouldn't be worth it because we would lose out on a lot of efficiency by doing so.
Yeah, I know on Ethereum it's from 46.5 down to 46.3 megahash. So it's a 0.2 megahash loss, but like a 10 watt saving.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So with the memory clock, we know that pushing it down any lower, because actually pushing it to 1073 has already lowered the hash rate. We know that pushing it lower is going to lower the hash rate more. So we're not going to test pushing that lower just because we know that. But on some other algorithms, like core dominant algorithms, you might want to keep testing pushing it lower.
Okay.
But the core clock, so you can try lowering it down to 1300.
Oh, so you're saying to lower the core clock, which is interesting, because I would imagine you want to be pushing them as high as it goes to get the most hash rate, but rather you're going down here.
So I would go both ways.
Oh, okay.
Unless you know that you're specifically in a range, because once you start moving it up or down, you're going to know what effect that has. So if we move it down and we lose hash rate, then we might think about moving it upwards.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So what do you suggest? Like move it down by 20 or?
You got to do a bit more than that to like actually make a noticeable difference.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, probably down at least to 1300.
Okay, 1300. And then something you were talking to me before we started the recording here was after you update your overclock settings, you usually have to reboot the rig. Is that right?
Yeah.
So basically, when you're doing tweaking like this, apply your overclock setting changes and then immediately reboot the rig. So I'll do that, and that'll be a cut until that's done, basically. So apply and reboot. All right, so rig has rebooted. So let me refresh here.
So I mean, at the moment, it looks like we've lost about 0.4 megahash.
Yeah.
So the wattage looks the same, but yeah, we'd probably want to revert back and even try pushing the core clock higher.
Oh, interesting.
Seeing if that has a better result.
Yeah, because from the looks of it now, it seems to kind of have stabilized around 23.6 or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
interesting. Okay.
We'll try going the other way. So we started with 1340. We tried 1300, lost a bit of hash rate. So we should try around 1400.
1400, right? Okay. So I will apply that and do another reboot. Yeah.
So what I can get on my 6700 XTs is about 24.5. So that's probably roughly what we should be aiming for.
Okay.
So, yeah, at 1340, we're getting about 24.06 or something around there. So hopefully this will increase the hash rate. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're already on 24.3 here, and I don't think it's fully settled yet. So how are we doing? You see that? 25.2.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. 1400 is good. Like that's 25 megahash is a good number.
Yeah.
So we've got our clock speeds, and now we'll move on to the undervolting side. So this is the more technical part that does get a little bit tricky. So I have a step-by-step process. So firstly, I start with the settings that have the greatest difference on power usage. So that would be core voltage first, and then SoC VDD max, and then memory voltage, and lastly memory controller voltage, because it makes very little difference. And then there's a 4-step process that you like repeat 100 times doing this.
All right. Okay.
So we go down in steps of 10. So you would decrease the voltage by 10 millivolts, and then reboot the rig and see if it's stable once it's rebooted.
Okay.
So try 660 in there.
So basically, then we go down by 10, reboot, and then what are we looking for to make sure it's stable and it keeps the same hash rate that we had before? Yes. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I will apply and reboot the rig.
Yeah. So if it's stable after the reboot, we'll repeat the step above. Pretty much your goal with this is to move the setting down so low that the rig does crash. And then, because you're doing it in steps of 10, once you hit the crash, you know the two numbers between which it's failing. And then, yeah, probably note that number down, because you want to get about 10 to 20 millivolts above that.
Right, because you want to be a little bit on the safe side to make sure it is consistently stable.
Yeah, and if you like really highly value stability, like you got a massive farm, probably push it up a bit more.
All right, so the rig is rebooted. I'm gonna do a refresh here and we'll see what we have. Okay, so we're on 24.86, which is
looking good.
Looking good. I'm gonna open the shell. All right, so yeah, I mean, it seems to be 25.2 still.
Yeah, it's within that range and it's stable. So we would head down again on that same setting.
Cool.
Try down to 650.
Okay, so it's rebooted and yeah, it seems to be doing pretty good.
Nice. Yeah, you can drop it to like 640. Mine personally would be 650. That's what my GPU stopped at. So this could crash your rig.
Okay, well, let's see if this crashes and then we'll take it from there. All right, so we are rebooted. Let's see. I don't think we're a bit high on the load average here. So maybe I guess we'll see what happens.
Oh, that's not good.
It's climbing. Oh yeah, we're climbing. Okay,
just stop the miner. Yeah, stop the miner before it crashes, just to save a bit of time.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what it looks like when it crashes. The load average will shoot sky high. It'll just keep going. And you want to stop the miner or reboot the rig, because if you just leave it to do its own thing, it's going to take a while and then it's going to reboot.
All right, so we know that it crashes at 640, but it seems to be doing fine at 650. So does that mean you would probably put it at 660 to be on the safe side?
Yep, for like longer term stuff, I would chuck it at 660. And it also makes it easier on the testing, because we've ran it at 650 for like a minute, but who knows, it might crash every 7 minutes or something at that.
Right, yeah.
That clock. So on our next testing, when we test the different undervolts, then it might actually crash the rig like from the previous setting, which would be really confusing for us, because we wouldn't know, we would link it as the setting we've just changed as the fault, but it could actually be the previous setting. So we want to set it a bit off of what crashes it.
Right, I see. Okay, so let's go through quickly what the game plan is. So we would put the core voltage back to 660, yeah? So then next we would basically just do this same process on SoC voltage, is that right?
Yes.
And then once we've done that and found our sweet spot there, onto memory voltage, and then finally onto memory controller voltage. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so SoC VDD max, we would go 830 then.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll stop the camera here, and then we'll jump to us having found the optimal voltages for these 4 settings. So be right back. All right, so for you guys, it's only been a second or so, but for us, it's been, what, a couple of hours maybe?
Days.
Yeah, but what we have done is we've done this whole process for all 4 of my cards here, and this is a very good example of like how every card is individual and needs its own settings, because for the very first card there, you can see we were able to go pretty low on the the controller voltage, while the middle 2 needed just a little bit more there, but other than that, they were fine. But the very last one here is unfortunately just a silicon lottery loser. It needed significantly higher both on the controller voltage as well as needing a bit more memory voltage to be stable and to get up to the 24, 25 or so mega hash. But in doing this, Kiwi Crypto Miner told me a few really smart and interesting things that I actually wrote down to make sure we were able to share with you guys. So the very first thing is that the SoC voltage, the very bottom setting here, SoC VDD max, you need to be about 20 or probably even 30 above where you crashed.
Yes, so the SoC VDD max has a greater range. So for the core voltage and some of the others, you're looking at like a smaller range of maybe 150 millivolts in which it can operate at that core clock. Whereas for the SoC VDD max, it's like a 400 millivolt like operating range. So yeah, like relative to that range, the percentage that you need to be like off of it would be the same. So you'd want to be like 2 or 3 times more off of where you crashed for the SoC VDD max than the other voltages. So 20 or 30, even 40 if you're super worried about stability.
Cool. The second thing was basically whenever you do get a crash, to click on the little message to get more information. So unfortunately, I cleared all of those crash messages because we wanted it to look nice for you guys. But whenever you get a crash, you usually get a little message up here in HiveOS where it basically says like, your rig crashed. But what you can do there is you can actually click on that message and it will give you some information. So it will usually say which GPU crashed, which just helps you, especially if you're working with multiple GPUs, to pinpoint what GPU crashed, which obviously makes troubleshooting that much quicker.
And sometimes it won't say the GPU, but it will say a PCIe lane, which you can then correspond to the PCIe lane underneath the GPU as shown there.
Yeah, so that's it might not say these you know, like GPU 1 or GPU 2, but instead it will say like this number next to something like PCIe lane, just like Kiwi Crypto Miner said there. And moving on to the next smart thing you said, which was that memory voltage can affect memory clock. So sometimes when you lower the voltage, specifically on the memory voltage, it might lower the hash rate, even though it theoretically shouldn't. So if you do your tweaking and you start lowering your memory voltage, and all of a sudden you're noticing a hash rate drop off, that could be an indicator that like that's the cutoff point for, you know, your memory voltage, and you need to probably step it up a little bit from there.
Yeah, so that one's not super common. It's probably more common on other algorithms, like less common algorithms. I think the ones that I had it on were like core dominant algorithms. But yeah, you just get to a point where you're lowering the voltage and you notice the hash rate drop off. And then if you open the miner screen, you can see that the clock speed is no longer what you set it at, which yeah, isn't good. So you just need to treat that the same as you would treat a crash and increase that voltage.
Cool. And then finally, I don't know what I've meant here. I said lower controller voltage, higher power after a while. What does that mean?
Because how we were lowering that VDDCI, or the memory controller voltage, we got down to like 530, and the power was higher at 530 than it was at 570.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah. That's basically it. So if you start hitting a point where you keep lowering the memory controller voltage, and all of a sudden the card starts, you know, pulling more power, then just put it back up, and that's your optimal setting for efficiency, basically.
Yep, that pretty much covers it all.
All right, so Kiwi Crypto Miner, thank you so much for coming on here and teaching us all your tricks and showing us kind of like a peek behind the scene of how to get these like insane efficiencies that you're able to get on your AMD cards. And as a little thank you for coming on here, I'm actually gonna order one of these PMDs for you. Is that okay?
That'd be awesome, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks heaps for that.
So for those of you who don't know, it's a little device that lets you measure the exact power draw. Now, Kiwi Crypto Miner has a pretty good approach to getting like accurate power measurements for his testing anyway. But he doesn't have one of these, and I really like these, and it could be just another tool in your arsenal, basically. So yeah, I'm gonna ship one of these to you.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much again. But that's it. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then please go check out Kiwi Crypto Miner's channel. I'll leave some links to his videos over here, as well as a button you can click to subscribe to his channel over here. But yeah, that's it. Go check him out. Goodbye. Goodbye, bye-bye.